Veeler stood in the observation deck of the Galactic Council chambers, his four eyes watching the proceedings below with mild interest. The insectoid being had seen hundreds of species present themselves to the Council over his long career. Today was humanity's turn, and he expected nothing different from the usual displays of desperation and hope. The humans had sent 3 representatives. Veeler had read their files that morning. Tehaho was a scientist and diplomat wearing what humans called a suit. Hana was listed as a military advisor, though found that amusing. What military could such a small species possibly have? The third was Jiho, captain of one of their colony ships. Teho stepped forward to the speaking platform. The chamber fell into a polite silence, though Veeler could hear the chittering and clicking of several council members, who were clearly not taking this seriously. The human looked small under the massive domed ceiling. His dark hair was neatly arranged, and his eyes scanned the room with careful attention. Honorable members of the Galactic Council, Teho began, his voice steady. Humanity comes before you not as conquerors or warriors, but as explorers and friends. We bring gifts of knowledge and hope for cooperation. Veeler made a note on his data pad. Human spoke well, but his words were typical. Every weak species claimed to come in peace. It was always the strong ones who actually did. Teho activated a holographic display. Images of human medical advances floated in the air. He explained how humans had cured diseases, how they had developed artificial organs, how they had extended their lifespans from mere decades to over a century. Veeler admitted, if only to himself, that it was impressive for such a young species. We also bring cultural exchanges, Teho continued. We have music, art, literature, and philosophy we wish to share. We believe that diversity makes us all stronger. From the council seats, a deep rumbling laugh echoed. Jexter, the Kryath commander, rose to his full height. The reptilian being was 3 times the size of Teho, covered in thick scales and battle scars. Philosophy, Jexter's voice dripped with mockery. You bring us philosophy while we bring you reality. How many warships does humanity possess? Teho paused. Our fleet consists of 73 vessels, most are exploration and colony ships. We have 12 dedicated defense platforms. The chamber erupted in clicking, hissing, and what passed for laughter among the various species. Jexter's eyes gleamed with amusement. 73 ships. The Kreneth Empire has 14,000 warships, and you speak to us of cooperation. You are prey, pretending to be predators. Veeler watched Tehaho's face carefully. The human's expression remained calm, though something flickered in his eyes. Not anger exactly, something else. Something that Veeler couldn't quite identify. Hana, the military advisor, had been silent throughout the presentation. She sat in the second row of the human delegation, a data pad in her hands. Veeler noticed that she was taking notes. Detailed notes. Her fingers moved quickly across the screen, and her eyes never left Jexter's position in the chamber. We do not seek to match your military might, Teho said quietly. We seek only to exist in peace alongside you. Peace, Jexter repeated, making the word sound like an insult. Peace is what the weak beg for when they cannot fight. Galaxy has no place for species who cannot defend themselves. Several other council members nodded in agreement. Veeler had to admit that Jexter was not entirely wrong. The galaxy was a harsh place. Species that could not protect themselves were usually absorbed or destroyed. It was simply the way things worked. The Council Premier, an ancient being named Voxen, raised one of his many appendages. The Council will take humanity's request for membership under consideration. We will vote in 30 cycles. Until then, humanity is granted observer status. It was a polite way of saying that humanity was being rejected. Observer status meant they could watch but not participate. They could speak but not vote. They were essentially children, being allowed to sit at the adult table. Tejo bowed his head in acceptance. Thank you, Premier. We appreciate the Council's time and consideration. As the human delegation filed out of the chamber, Wheeler made his final notes for the day. Humans appear incapable of true galactic survival, he typed. They possess advanced medical technology and interesting cultural developments, but lack the military strength necessary for independence. Their philosophy of mercy and compassion is admirable but impractical. They will likely seek protection from a stronger species within the next few cycles. Recommend limited interaction and minimal resource allocation. He paused, then added one more line of particular note. The military advisor Hana remained silent throughout the proceedings. Purpose of her presence unclear. She took extensive notes but did not contribute to the discussion. Wheeler closed his data pad and prepared to leave. As he walked down the corridor, he passed the human delegation waiting at the transport station. Jiho was speaking quietly with Tejo. Their heads close together. Hana stood apart from them, looking out at the stars through the massive viewport. Wheeler approached her, curious. Your delegation performed adequately, he said, attempting what humans called small talk. Hana turned to look at him. Her eyes were dark and calm like still water. Thank you, she said simply. You said nothing during the presentation, Wheeler observed. As a military advisor, I would have expected you to defend your fleet's capabilities. Hana smiled slightly. It was not a warm smile. There was nothing to defend, she said. Commander Jexter stated facts. We do have a small fleet. We are not a military power. Then why are you here? To watch, Hana said. To listen to learn. She gestured to her data pad. To remember. Something about her tone made Wheeler's antenna twitch with discomfort. Remember what? Who laughed? Hana said softly. Who mocked? Who threatened? And, most importantly, who did nothing when we asked for peace? She looked back at the stars. Just in case we ever need to know. Wheeler felt a strange chill run through his exoskeleton. There was something in the human's voice that bothered him. It was not anger or fear. It was something far more disturbing. It was patience. The transport arrived and the humans boarded without another word. As Wheeler watched them leave, he considered adding another note to his report. But what would he say? That a human smile had made him uncomfortable. That patience felt threatening. It seemed absurd. He decided against it. Humans were weak, emotional creatures who would learn their place in the galaxy soon enough. There was nothing to worry about. Thar was very, very wrong. 6 months had passed since humanity's presentation to the Galactic Council. Wheeler had filed his reports and moved on to other assignments. The humans had been granted limited observer status and had quietly established a few more colonies in Unclaimed space, they caused no trouble. They made no demands, they simply existed on the edge of galactic awareness. Wheeler was reviewing trade disputes between two minor species when the alert came through, a distress signal from human space. He pulled up the transmission, expecting perhaps a mechanical failure or a natural disaster. What he saw made his blood run cold. The signal came from Taiyang Prime, one of humanity's newer colonies. The video feed showed Governor Minyu standing in what appeared to be a command center. Smoke filled the air behind him, and alarms were blaring. His face was covered in dust and blood, but his voice remained steady. This is Governor Minyu of Taiyang Prime. To any galactic council vessels in range, we are under attack by Kryath forces. I repeat, we are under attack. We have not provoked this assault. We are attempting to evacuate civilians, but they are targeting the residential districts. We need immediate assistance. The camera shook as an explosion rocked the building. Minyu grabbed the console to steady himself. We are willing to negotiate. We seek only the safety of our people. Please, we are unarmed. This is a farming colony. We have families here, children. Another explosion closer. This time, the transmission cut to static, then switched to another feed. This one showed the surface of Taiyang Prime from a satellite. Wheeler watched as Kranath warships rained fire on the colony below. Buildings that had stood for years crumbled in seconds. Farmland turned to ash. The colony's small defensive shield flickered and died. Wheeler immediately contacted the council. Premier, have you seen the transmission from Taiyang Prime? I have, Voxlon replied, his voice tired. The Kranath have claimed that sector as part of their expansion zone. But humans were there first. The colony has been established for 3 years. The Kranath do not recognize human territorial claims. They view humanity as too weak to hold territory. We must intervene, Wheeler said, surprised by the urgency in his own voice. They are slaughtering civilians. The council has voted. This is considered an internal territorial dispute. We will not intervene in matters between species unless both parties request mediation. Wheeler wanted to argue, but he knew it was pointless. The council never intervened when strong species attacked weak ones. It was considered natural selection on a galactic scale. He pulled up the live feeds from Taiyang Prime and watched in horror. Sora, the colony's chief engineer, was leading civilians through underground tunnels. The camera on her helmet showed the frightened faces of colonists running behind her. Keep moving, she shouted. The transport ships are waiting at the south landing pad. We can make it, but they didn't make it. Kryath ground team breached the tunnel entrance. Wheeler watched as Sora put herself between the soldiers and the civilians. She had no weapon. She simply stood there, arms spread wide, protecting the people behind her. The Kryath commander didn't hesitate. He didn't ask for surrender. He simply opened fire. The feed from Sora's helmet went dark. Wheeler switched to another camera. This one showed a young woman named Yuna helping children onto an evacuation shuttle. She was a farmer, barely out of her teenage years. According to her file, she was supposed to be harvesting crops and tending animals, not loading terrified children onto escape vehicles while buildings burned around her. Go, go, Yuna urged. The children, get to the back of the shuttle and strap in. A boy no more. then 6 years old, froze at the shuttle door. He was crying, calling for his mother. Yuna knelt beside him, speaking softly, even as explosions echoed across the landing pad. "It's okay," she said gently. "Your mother will meet us at the next stop, but we need to go now." "Okay." The boy nodded and ran into the shuttle. Yuna stood to follow, but she looked up at the wrong moment. A Kryeth fighter screamed overhead, its weapons hot. Yuna had just enough time to push the last child into the shuttle before the blast hit. The shuttle's automatic doors closed, the pilot, tears streaming down his face, launched the vessel into the sky. Through the rear camera, Velar could see Yuna's body lying motionless on the landing pad. Her final transmission reached Earth moments later. Velar intercepted it. It was just audio activated by her life support system. As it failed, her voice was weak, fading. Tell them I tried. Tell them I saved 12 children. Tell them." Transmission ended. Velar sat in his observation post, staring at the screens around him. Other council observers were watching the same feeds. Some looked disturbed, others looked bored, a few looked pleased that the human problem was being solved. He pulled up the official Galactic Council response to humanity's distress calls. It was a standard form message: "Your territorial claim has been disputed by another species. The Council cannot intervene in internal disputes. We encourage peaceful negotiation between parties." It was meaningless. Everyone knew the Kreneth didn't negotiate. 3 hours after the attack began, Velar watched the last human transmission from Taeyang Prime. It was Governor Minyu again, but he was no longer in the command center. He was in a bunker somewhere, surrounded by the few survivors. His face was blank, emotionless. Behind him, wounded civilians lay on makeshift beds. Doctor was trying to save them with limited supplies. "This is Governor Minyu of Taeyang Prime. Final transmission," he said quietly. "The Kreneth have taken the colony. 3,712 colonists are confirmed dead. Another 800 are missing, presumed dead. We managed to evacuate approximately 2,000 civilians to the Galactic Council. We came to you in peace. We asked for help. You gave us nothing. We will remember this. To Earth, to the United Colonies of Humanity. I'm sorry we couldn't hold, but tell them what happened here. Tell them everything, and tell them we tried peace. We really tried." Transmission ended. Taeyang Prime went silent. Velar expected some response from humanity. Angry messages, perhaps. Accusations thrown at the council. Demands for justice, but nothing came. No transmissions, no complaints, no fury, just silence. The next day, the Galactic Council held a session. Taehaho and Hana were there. Sitting in the observer section, Velar studied them carefully. Taehaho's face showed no emotion. Hana was writing in her data pad again, her expression calm. When the session opened for observer comments, Taeho stood. "The Galactic Council has made its position clear," he said softly. "Humanity understands now. We will not ask for your help again." He sat down. That was all he said. No anger, no tears, no threats. Hana continued writing. As they left the chamber, Velar noticed something that made his antenna twitch again. Hana's data pad screen was visible for just a moment. She wasn't taking notes about the council session. She was looking at files, detailed files, names, positions, Locations, she was looking at files on every council member who had voted against intervention. That night, Wheeler added a new note to his report. Humans are grieving but not. As expected, they are quiet, too quiet. The military advisor, Hanna, remains focused on data collection, purpose still unclear, recommend continued observation. He sent the report and tried to sleep, but he kept seeing Yuna's face in his mind, the young farmer who had saved 12 children before dying alone on a landing pad. He kept hearing the silence that followed humanity's grief, and somehow that silence was more terrifying than any scream could ever be. 3 weeks after the massacre at Taiyang Prime, Wheeler noticed something strange. Human space had gone completely silent. No distress calls, no trade requests, no diplomatic messages, no casual communications. Nothing. It was as if humanity had simply vanished from the galaxy. At first the council dismissed it. Perhaps humans were mourning their dead. Perhaps they were reorganizing their remaining colonies. Perhaps they had finally realized they didn't belong among the stars and were retreating to their home world. The Krenoth, meanwhile, celebrated their victory. Jexter made several public broadcasts declaring the successful reclamation of territory. He announced plans to claim 3 more human colonies in the coming months. No one on the council objected. The strong took from the weak. This was how the galaxy worked, but Wheeler couldn't shake his unease. He had been assigned to monitor humanity, and their silence bothered him in ways he couldn't explain. After the second week of no communications, he requested permission to investigate. The council granted it, likely hoping he would confirm that humanity was no longer a concern. Wheeler took his observation ship to the nearest human colony, a world called New Sol. As he approached, his sensors picked up unusual activity. Ships were moving, hundreds of them, but they weren't warships. They were civilian vessels, cargo haulers, colony transports. They were all heading in the same direction, inward toward the more established human worlds. Wheeler hailed one of the transports. Tyredell-looking human captain appeared on his screen. This is Captain Doyen of the transport vessel Morning Star. State your business. I am council observer. Wheeler, I am conducting a routine check on human colonies. Why are so many ships evacuating? The captain's expression remained neutral. Evacuation is incorrect. We're consolidating our population, moving civilians to more defensible positions. Defensible? Wheeler's antenna twitched. Are you expecting more attacks? We're not expecting anything. Observer, we're preparing for everything. The captain ended the transmission. Wheeler tried to land on New Sol, but his request was denied. The automated message was polite but firm. All non-human vessels were restricted from human space until further notice. For security purposes, he retreated to a safe distance and observed. More ships came and went. The colony's defensive platforms, which had been minimal before, were being upgraded. Wheeler's sensors detected new power signatures. Weapons platforms, shield generators. Things that hadn't been there a month ago. Where had humans gotten military technology? They had claimed to be peaceful. They had said their fleet was small and outdated. Wheeler sent a report to the council. Human activity suggests military build-up, nature and extent unknown. Recommend immediate investigation. The Council's response was dismissive. Weak species often make futile attempts at self-defense after attacks. This is expected behavior. Continue monitoring, but take no action. Frustrated, Wheeler expanded his search. He moved through human space quietly, using his ship's stealth capabilities. What he found disturbed him greatly. Every human colony was evacuating. Non-essential personnel, the colonies that remained active, were being fortified. Supply ships moved constantly between worlds, but their cargo manifests were encrypted, military-grade encryption. Wheeler had never known humans to use such security before. Then he intercepted something that made his blood run cold. It was just a fragment of a transmission, broken up and heavily coded. His ship's computer could only translate part of it. Protocol Prometheus is active. God, forgive us. Wheeler didn't know what Protocol Prometheus was. He didn't know what God the humans were asking forgiveness from. But the tone of the message was clear. Something was coming, something big. He tried to infiltrate human communication networks, but found them completely locked down. Every channel was encrypted. Every transmission was scrambled. The humans who had been so open and friendly just months ago had built walls around their entire civilization. On the fourth week of silence, Wheeler discovered something that explained everything and terrified him completely. He had positioned his ship near a human asteroid field, using the rocks for cover while he scanned nearby space. His sensors picked up massive energy signatures from deep within the field, against regulations but driven by desperate curiosity. He moved closer. What he saw defied everything he thought he knew about humanity. Ships, hundreds of ships, but not the exploration vessels and colony transports he had seen in their fleet. Reports, these were warships, real warships, massive dreadnoughts that dwarfed anything in the Kryath fleet, carriers that could hold thousands of fighters, destroyers bristling with weapons that Wheeler didn't even recognize. They were launching from hidden construction facilities inside the asteroids, facilities that must have been built over decades, hidden, secret, waiting. Wheeler's hands shook as he recorded everything. Humans had lied, or perhaps they hadn't lied at all. Perhaps they had simply not mentioned their military reserves. Perhaps when Tehaho had said humanity had 73 vessels, he had meant active vessels, not total vessels. Human destroyer detected Wheeler's ship. He received a transmission. A woman's face appeared on his screen. She had cold eyes and wore a military uniform with insignias he didn't recognize. The name on her uniform read, Nari, Council Observer. She said calmly, "You are trespassing in restricted human military space. You have 30 seconds to leave this sector, or you will be fired upon. I am a council observer," Wheeler protested. "I have diplomatic immunity. The Galactic Council abandoned us," Nari replied. "Your diplomatic immunity means nothing here." 20 seconds. "What are you doing? What is all this?" Nari smiled. It was not a kind smile. "We're taking your advice, observer. The galaxy says the weak must become strong or die. We're choosing to become strong." 10 seconds. Wheeler's ship jumped to faster than light speed. He fled human space and returned directly to the Galactic Council headquarters. He demanded an immediate session with the Premier. "Humans have been building a secret military fleet for decades," Wheeler reported, his voice shaking. They have dreadnoughts, carriers, weapons I've never seen before. They've been preparing for war while pretending to be peaceful. Premier Vauxhalland looked unconcerned. How many ships? I counted over 300 in just one construction site. There could be more, many more. Even 300 ships is not enough to threaten the established powers. Vauxhalland said, the Kryeth alone have 14,000 vessels. You don't understand, Veeler insisted. These aren't like our ships. The technology is different, advanced, and the humans, they're not the same anymore. They're organizing, mobilizing. I saw military personnel, intelligence officers, strategic command structures. These aren't farmers and scientists anymore. What do you suggest we do? Send a diplomatic mission, open negotiations, prevent whatever is about to happen. Vauxhall considered this. Very well, we will send an envoy to the humans, requesting dialogue. The envoy was sent that day. The response came within hours. It was a simple text message sent to every council member, every galactic news network, every species in known space. The message came from someone named Fleet Admiral Dune. The Galactic Council's request for dialogue has been received and noted. However, humanity is currently occupied with internal matters. We will contact the Council when we are ready. In the meantime, we advise all Kroneth vessels to evacuate human territorial space immediately. This is your only warning. Attached to the message was a video. It showed human fleet, hundreds of ships strong, moving in perfect formation through space. At the front was a massive dreadnought, on its hull painted in letters large enough to see from orbit was a name, Una. Jexter's response was broadcast within the hour. He laughed. He called humans scared children playing with weapons. They don't understand, he said. The Kreneth would take whatever territory they wished whenever they wished. Veeler watched as Jexter's fleet moved toward another human colony, intending to repeat what they had done to Taiyang Prime. Then every screen in Council headquarters lit up with the same image. It was Hana. She was wearing a military uniform now, medals across her chest. Behind her stood Tehaho, Jiho, and dozens of other humans, all in uniform, all watching the camera with the same cold, patient expression. Hana spoke one sentence. You took our mercy for weakness. That was your mistake. The transmission ended and the war began. The first battle lasted 11 minutes. Veeler watched from his observation post as Jexter's fleet approached the human colony of Busausen Station. The Kryeth commander had brought 200 warships, expecting an easy victory like before. His ships moved in the traditional attack formation, weapons charged, shields at maximum. The human fleet appeared on sensors, 50 ships. The Kryeth outnumbered them 4-1. Jexter's broadcast was full of confidence and mockery. Foolish humans, your toys will not save you. Then the battle started and Veeler saw something he had never witnessed before. Humans didn't fight like any species he knew. A pilot named Sunho led the first attack wing. His fighters moved in patterns that made no tactical sense. According to galactic combat doctrine, they darted in close, too close, weaving between Kryeth ships like insects. Their weapons weren't aimed at shields or armor. They targeted sensor arrays, communication hubs, engine controls. Within 2 minutes, the Kryeth fleet was blind and deaf. Ships couldn't talk to each other. Sensors showed false Readings, commanders shouted orders that never reached their crews. Then the human dreadnoughts opened fire. Wheeler had analyzed thousands of space battles. He knew how naval combat worked. Ships stayed at a distance. They wore down shields. They traded fire until one side retreated or was destroyed. Battles took hours, sometimes days. Humans didn't do that. Their weapons were different. Wheeler watched as beams of energy tore through Kryeth's shields like they weren't even there. Kinetic weapons, massive chunks of metal accelerated to incredible speeds, punched holes through ship hulls. One hit was enough to a vessel. 2 hits destroyed it completely. But the weapons weren't the most horrifying part. It was the strategy. Humans didn't try to disable enemy ships. They didn't aim for surrender. Every shot was meant to kill. Every attack was designed to destroy completely. There was no honor in it, no mercy, just cold, calculated destruction. Jekkster tried to retreat. After 7 minutes, his fleet broke formation and attempted to flee, but human ships had surrounded them. There was no escape route, no chance to regroup. The trap had been set from the beginning. Sun Ho's fighters launched something Wheeler had never seen before. Small drones, barely visible on sensors, swarmed the fleeing Kinath vessels. They attached to hulls and detonated hundreds of small explosions that ripped through armor and tore ships apart from the inside. Jekkster's final transmission was nothing like his earlier boasts. "We surrender. Please, we surrender." His voice was filled with panic and fear. Human voice responded. It was Hana. "You did not accept surrender at Taeyong Prime. Why should we accept yours? Please, we were following orders. We didn't know." The transmission cut off. Jekkster's flagship exploded in a ball of fire that was visible from 3-star systems away. 11 minutes, 200 Kryeth warships destroyed, 0 human casualties. The galaxy watched in shock. This wasn't supposed to be possible. Humans were weak. They were peaceful. They were prey, but prey didn't hunt like this. Wheeler received new orders from the Council: monitor and report. Do nothing else. The Council was scrambling to understand what was happening. Emergency sessions were called. Ambassadors demanded explanations. Humanity provided one. Admiral Doi appeared on every galactic channel. His face was hard and emotionless. The Kreneth Empire declared war on humanity when they attacked Taeyong Prime. They killed our civilians, our children. They showed no mercy. We will return the favor. This is not a request for mediation. This is a statement of fact. The Kryeth Empire will be dismantled. Anyone who aids them will be considered an enemy. Anyone who attacks human interests will be destroyed. The time for diplomacy has ended. The message was clear. Humans were no longer asking for permission to exist. They were taking it. Wheeler watched as the human fleet divided into multiple battle groups. They moved with frightening efficiency, each group targeting a different Kreneth world. And what they did to those worlds broke every rule of galactic warfare. A human officer named Suji led the ground operations. Her troops landed on Kreneth colony worlds with one mission: remove all Kreneth military presence. But they didn't stop at military targets. They destroyed infrastructure. They disabled power plants. They contaminated water supplies with chemicals that were harmless to other species but made Kryeth violently ill. Tejo, the diplomat who had spoken so gently about peace and cooperation, now led something called the Scientific Warfare Division. Wheeler intercepted reports of biological weapons designed specifically to target cryoth genetics, nanite swarms that ate through cryoth technology but left other materials untouched, weapons that were illegal under every galactic convention ever written. When other species protested, Hana's response was broadcast across all channels. You wrote those conventions. You agreed to them, but you did nothing. When the cryoth violated them by attacking civilians, you have no moral authority here. The cryoth tried to rally. They called in allies. They mobilized their full military, 14,000 warships, just as they had always boasted. It should have been overwhelming force. It wasn't enough. Humans fought like nothing Wheeler had ever seen. They used tactics from their own history, strategies from ancient wars fought on their home planet. They called it total war. Every resource dedicated to victory, every method permitted, no rules except survival. One battle stood out in Wheeler's memory. The cryoth made a stand at their military headquarters on the world called Kryx. 5,000 warships defended the planet. It should have been impossible to break. The humans didn't try to break it. They went around it. Human ships appeared in orbit around every other major cryoth world simultaneously. In one coordinated strike, they disabled the cryoth supply network, communications grid, and government centers. Then they broadcast a message to Kryx: surrender now or we will make your home world uninhabitable. You have 1 hour. The cryoth refused. They didn't believe humans would actually do it. They were wrong. Wheeler watched as human ships launched what they called kinetic bombardment. No explosives, no fancy weapons, just massive metal rods dropped from orbit at incredible speeds. The impact of metal hitting ground at those velocities released more energy than nuclear weapons. The cryoth military headquarters was gone in seconds. The city around it was flattened. Shock waves rippled across the entire continent. The planet's atmosphere filled with dust and debris. It would take decades for Six to recover, and through it all, Wheeler kept hearing the same phrases in human military communications, words from their ancient history. Remember Tiang Prime for Yuna. No mercy for those who showed none. Within 6 weeks, the Kreneth Empire was shattered. 14,000 ships reduced to scattered remnants fleeing to wherever would take them. Dozens of worlds occupied or rendered unusable. The species that had ruled through fear and strength for centuries was brought to its knees by a species they had mocked as weak. The galaxy watched in horror. If humans could do this to the cryoth, what could they do to anyone else? Wheeler sent his reports to the council, but he no longer knew what to say. He had studied humans. He had observed them. He had thought he understood them. He had been completely wrong. These weren't the peaceful philosophers who had asked for friendship. These weren't the gentle farmers who had begged for mercy. These were something else, something ancient and terrifying that had been hiding beneath the surface all along. One night, Wheeler reviewed footage from the early battles. He watched Sun Ho's fighter wing move through Kreneth formations. He watched Suji's troops execute military operations with ruthless precision. He watched Tejo explain weapon systems that violated every ethical standard, and he finally understood humans weren't becoming monsters. They had always been capable of this. They had simply chosen not to show it. They had chosen peace, mercy, and cooperation, and when the galaxy rejected those choices, when the galaxy killed their children and laughed at their grief, humans had made a different choice. They had chosen to show the galaxy what apex predators really looked like. The war wasn't over, but everyone knew how it would end. The question wasn't if humans would win. The question was what the galaxy would look like afterward, and whether anyone would dare challenge humanity again. The Galactic Council chamber felt different now. The same seats, the same lighting, the same massive dome overhead, but everything had changed. The council members who had laughed at humanity's weakness now sat in nervous silence. Velar stood in his observation post, watching as Hana entered the chamber. She wore her military uniform, the medals on her chest representing battles that had destroyed an empire in 8 weeks. Behind her walked Teho Jiho and Admiral D. Hyan. Other species moved aside as they passed like prey avoiding predators. Premier Voxlin called the emergency session to order. His voice lacked its usual confidence. The Galactic Council recognizes the human delegation. We request that humanity cease its current military operations against the Krenoth Empire. Hana stepped to the speaking platform. She didn't look nervous or apologetic. She looked tired and cold. Why? The simple question echoed through the chamber. Voxlin seemed taken aback. Because the destruction has been extensive, because the Kryeth are prepared to surrender, because further violence serves no purpose. You're wrong, Hana said quietly. Violence serves a purpose. It teaches lessons. The Kryeth learned that humanity is not prey. The galaxy is learning that attacking us has consequences. She pulled up a holographic display. It showed casualty numbers, Kryeth military losses, destroyed ships, occupied worlds. You want us to stop because you're afraid, not of what we've done to the Kryeth, of what we might do to you. Several council members began protesting at once. Hana waited for them to quiet down. When she spoke again, her voice cut through the noise like a knife. Let me be very clear. We will accept the Krenoth surrender, but on our terms. Complete demilitarization. Their fleet reduced to civilian vessels. Only reparations paid to every human family that lost someone at Taeyang Prime. Human observers stationed on every major Krenoth world to ensure compliance, and Jexter's second in command will stand trial for war crimes. Those terms are too harsh, a council member objected. You're destroying their entire civilization. They tried to destroy ours, Hana replied. We're being merciful by letting them survive at all. Velar felt his antenna twitch. Merciful, humans called this mercy. What would their wrath look like if they weren't being merciful? Premier Voxlin spoke carefully. And if the Kryeth refuse these terms, then in 3 days their home world becomes uninhabitable. In 4 days their remaining colonies follow. In 5 days, the Kryeth species exist only historical records. Hana's expression didn't change. We gave them a choice. They chose war. They chose to kill our children. Now they live with the consequences. The chamber erupted into chaos. Some species demanded that the council stop humanity. Others argued for neutrality. A few quietly agreed that the Kryeth had brought this on themselves. Through it all, Hana stood calmly at the platform, Waiting, eventually the council voted. By a narrow margin, they agreed not to interfere with humanity's war. After the session ended, Wheeler did something he had been dreading. He requested a private meeting with Tejo. He needed to understand. He needed to know how the gentle diplomat who had spoken of peace and cooperation had become part of this war machine. They met in a small conference room. TJO looked older than he had 9 months ago. There were lines on his face that hadn't been there before, but his eyes were still sharp, still intelligent. "Why did you want to speak with me?" Observer Tejo asked. Wheeler struggled to find the words. "I don't understand. When you came to the council, you spoke of mercy, compassion, cooperation. You said humanity wanted only peace. Was that all a lie?" "No," Tejo said simply. "It was completely true. We did want peace. We still do." "Then how can you justify what you've done? The weapons, the destruction, the biological warfare. You violated every galactic convention." Tejo was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was sad. "Let me tell you about my daughter. Her name was Me. She was 7 years old. She loved drawing pictures of stars. She wanted to be an explorer when she grew up." He paused. "She was on Taiyang Prime. She was one of the children who didn't make it to the evacuation shuttles." Wheeler felt something cold settle in his chest. I didn't know. Why would you?" "She was just one of 3,712 people who died that day. Just another number in a report." Tejo's hands clenched into fists. "The Kryath killed her. They targeted civilian areas. They shot fleeing refugees. And you know what the Galactic Council did? Nothing. You sent a foreign message. You told us to negotiate. You let them murder our children and called it an internal dispute. We have rules. Your rules protected the strong and abandoned the weak. Your rules said might makes right, so we decided to become mighty." Tejo looked directly at Wheeler. "We didn't want this. We didn't choose this path. You chose it for us. When you laughed at our fleet, when you mocked our philosophy, when you let the Kranath kill our children without consequence. But the cruelty you want to talk about." "Cruelty?" Tejo's voice rose. "We showed you our medical advances, technology that could save lives. We offered to share our culture. We asked only to be left in peace. And what did we get? We got bombs falling on farming colonies. We got children dying on landing pads. We got told that compassion was weakness and mercy was failure." He stood up, looking down at Wheeler. "We are cruel because we learned from you. We learned from the Kranath. We learned from every species that survives in this galaxy. The only lesson you teach is violence, so we became very, very good at it. But you could have been different. You could have stayed above it and died." Tejo shook his head. "You don't understand. We love fiercely because we know what loss feels like. We show mercy because we understand the alternative. Every kindness we offered you was a choice you mistook for inability. You thought we were weak. You thought we couldn't fight. You were wrong. We can fight. We can be brutal. We can be ruthless. We just didn't want to be." Wheeler felt his entire understanding crumbling. "So what happens now?" "Now the Kryath surrender. They rebuild under our supervision, and the galaxy learns a new lesson." TJO moved toward the door, then paused. "We didn't want to be feared. We wanted to be friends, but since friendship wasn't an option, we'll Settle for respect, and if we can't have respect, we'll take fear. Either way, no one will ever mock humanity again. No one will ever attack our children again. Because they'll know what happens if they do. The door closed behind him. Wheeler sat alone in the conference room, his mind reeling. 3 days later, the Kryeth accepted humanity's terms. Their empire, which had stood for centuries, was dismantled. In a single document, their mighty fleet was scrapped, their military leaders were tried and sentenced, their worlds were placed under human observation. Jeho was appointed as the human administrator for Krenath space. Wheeler watched the appointment ceremony. Jeho stood on a platform above thousands of Kryeth citizens. "We are not here to destroy you," Jeho said. "We are here to ensure you never destroy anyone else, rebuild your civilization, teach your children peace. Show us that this surrender means something, and maybe someday humanity will call you friends instead of enemies." It was both a promise and a threat. The galaxy changed after that. Species that had viewed humanity as weak prey suddenly treated them as equals. Trade agreements were signed, defense pacts were offered. The Galactic Council granted humanity full membership with voting rights. Wheeler wrote his final report on humanity. It was very different from his first one. "I came to observe a primitive species," he wrote. "I expected to see weakness and failure. Instead, I witnessed something that shattered every assumption I held. Humans are not peaceful because they cannot be violent. They are peaceful because they choose to be, knowing full well what violence looks like. They are not kind because they are naive. They are kind because they understand cruelty. They did not beg for mercy because they were weak. They begged for mercy because they knew what would happen if mercy was denied. We mistook their restraint for inability. We mistook their hope for foolishness. We mistook their offered hand for submission. We were wrong about everything. Humanity is not humanity, despite their capacity for violence. They are humanity because they choose when to unleash it. They are apex predators who decided to be gardeners, and we force them to remember what they really are. The galaxy should pray that humanity never forgets the price of peace, because the day they stop offering mercy is the day we all learn what wrath truly means. 2 years after the war ended, Wheeler visited Tiong Prime. The colony had been rebuilt. New buildings stood where old ones had burned. Fields were green again with crops. Children played in parks that had once been battlefields. At the center of the colony stood a memorial, a simple stone wall with 3,712 names carved into it. At the top, in letters larger than the others, was one name, Una. Wheeler stood before the memorial for a long time. Human colonists passed by, each one touching the wall as they went, remembering, honoring, promising never to forget. Young girl, maybe 8 years old, placed flowers at the base of the wall. She looked up at Wheeler with curious eyes. "Are you here to see the memorial?" "Yes," Wheeler said quietly. "I'm here to remember. My mom says we should never forget what happened here. She says we should remember so it never happens again. Your mother is wise." The girl smiled and ran off to join her friends. Wheeler watched her go, playing and laughing under a peaceful sky, and he finally understood humanity's greatest strength was never their weapons or their fleets or their capacity for violence. It was their ability to choose. Mercy after experiencing wrath, to build. Gardens after waging war, to offer. Kindness after learning cruelty. They were terrifying not because they could destroy, they were terrifying because, after everything they had done, after all the violence and blood and fire, they still chose to be kind. That was what broke Wheeler's understanding, not humanity's wrath but their mercy afterward. That was what would make them truly unstoppable.